If a top law enforcement official can get treated like this, what chance does the average person have? The sun hung high over Alexandria, Virginia, casting sharp shadows along the streets. It was the kind of afternoon where the heat shimmered off the pavement, making everything look like it was wavering in place. In the driver's seat of a sleek, unmarked black SUV sat FBI Director Camille Foster. She wasn't in her usual armored convoy today. No flashing lights, no agents trailing her. Just her, heading to an important security briefing at a federal building. A rare moment of solitude in a job where privacy was almost non-existent. The streets were calm as she approached an intersection. Then, red and blue lights flooded her rear-view mirror. She frowned, glancing at the speedometer. 35 in a 35. No way she was speeding. Maybe it was a mistaken identity. Or maybe something had happened nearby, and they needed her to move. Either way, she wasn't about to ignore the flashing lights. She signaled, pulled over to the curb, and exhaled. "All right, what's this about?" she muttered under her breath, reaching for her credentials. A lone officer stepped out of the cruiser behind her. He was young, mid-30s at best, built like a linebacker. His mirrored sunglasses hid his eyes, but his stiff posture told her enough. He wasn't approaching this like a routine stop. Camille rolled down her window before he even reached the door. "Afternoon, officer. What's the issue?" No response. Instead, he rested a hand on his holster and stared her down. "License and registration." His voice was clipped, almost rehearsed. Something about it made the hairs on the back of her neck stand up. She forced a polite nod. "Sure, but I'd like to know why I'm being stopped first." The officer's jaw tensed. "Step out of the vehicle." Her brows lifted. No reason given? No explanation? Not even a standard "you were speeding" or "your tail lights out"? This wasn't right. Camille kept her tone even. "I'd be happy to comply once you tell me why I'm being pulled over." His hand shifted slightly, just an inch, but enough for her to notice. His fingers hovered over the grip of his gun. "Step out," he repeated, his voice harder now, almost challenging. She could feel the tension thickening between them. She had been in law enforcement long enough to recognize an officer operating off pure ego. And that was dangerous. She sighed and moved slowly, deliberately. "All right, I'm reaching into my bag to show you my credentials." She kept her motions clear, lifting her purse from the passenger seat. No sudden moves. Her FBI badge was inside, plain as day. This should de-escalate everything. But as soon as her hand dipped into the bag, "Hands where I can see them!" The shout cut through the air like a gunshot. The officer had drawn his weapon, aimed directly at her. For a moment, time froze. Camille's grip on her purse loosened as she locked eyes with the barrel of the gun. People on the sidewalk turned. Cars passing by slowed down. A few pedestrians had stopped in their tracks, eyes wide as they reached for their phones. A quiet, sinking realization settled in her chest. This was about to become a spectacle. She kept her voice steady. "I am the director of the FBI. My badge is in my purse. I am reaching for it." The officer didn't blink. "Step out of the vehicle. Now." A few passers-by whispered among themselves. One of them, a woman in a denim jacket, was already recording. Camille's patience had a limit, but so did her choices. She slowly unbuckled her seatbelt and pushed the door open. As soon as she was upright. "Turn around. Hands on the roof." She clenched her jaw. "Officer, you are making a serious mistake." But his gun didn't waver. A slight shift in the wind carried the sound of sirens in the distance. More officers? Or someone who recognized what was happening? She wasn't sure. But she had a feeling this was far from over. And that's when everything spiraled. Camille kept her hands where he could see them. The heat of the sun pressed against her back as she stood beside her SUV, her palms flat against the roof. She could feel eyes on her, bystanders, drivers creeping past, the woman in the denim jacket still recording. The officer hadn't lowered his weapon. "Are you carrying any weapons?" His voice was sharp, rehearsed. She took a slow breath. "I am the director of the FBI. I am armed, but I am legally authorized to carry my firearm." That should have been the end of it. Any competent officer would take a step back, reassess, and confirm her identity. But instead, she heard the distinct click of his radio. "Dispatch, I have an uncooperative suspect refusing orders. Possible weapon on her." Her stomach twisted. Uncooperative? Suspect? She turned her head slightly. "Officer, I need you to think carefully about what you're saying right now." His free hand reached for his cuffs. "I said, hands on the car." Her blood ran hot. This wasn't a misunderstanding anymore. He wasn't listening. He wasn't processing. He had already decided who she was. Her voice stayed measured, but her patience was running thin. "I have identified myself. My badge is in my purse. I have every right to be carrying a weapon. And I have not resisted your orders." But he was done talking. With one rough yank, he grabbed her arm, twisting it behind her back. The sudden force made her inhale sharply. She had been trained to handle physical confrontation, but she also knew how this looked. A black woman in handcuffs, in broad daylight. The murmurs around them grew louder. Someone in the distance yelled, "Hey, what are you doing?" She felt the cold metal snap around one wrist. That's when she made a decision. "Call the special agent in charge at the Washington field office, now." The officer ignored her. "You need to stop and call right now." Her voice cut through the noise like a blade. He yanked her other arm back. "You're resisting. Do not finish that sentence." For a fraction of a second he hesitated, and that's all she needed. Camille turned her head, staring directly into his sunglasses. "I want your body cam on, right now. You are violating federal protocol, and you will lose your badge if you don't de-escalate immediately." The grip on her arm loosened. He was listening now. Not because he suddenly believed her, but because something in her voice rattled him. But before he could say anything else, another voice broke through the air. "What the hell is going on here?" A second police officer had just arrived, older, more aware. Camille turned her head slightly and exhaled through her nose. Finally. Someone else to step in. But the first officer didn't back down. Suspect refused to comply. Possible firearm. The older cop's entire face shifted. He glanced at Camille, then back at the younger officer. "Do you have any idea who you just cuffed?" The younger officer stiffened. "She wouldn't identify herself." The older cop's eyes narrowed. "Did you check her ID?" Silence. A long, painful silence. Camille didn't move. She didn't need to. The damage was already done. And then, the woman in the denim jacket, still recording, spoke up. "That's the director of the FBI, you idiot." The words hit like a hammer. The younger officer froze. For the first time since this started, he looked unsure. But it was too late. Because suddenly, a wave of black SUVs appeared at the end of the street. Unmarked. Dark windows. Moving fast. And Camille knew exactly what was about to happen. The air shifted. The younger officer still had his hand on Camille's arm, but she could feel his grip weaken. His confidence cracking. His eyes darted toward the row of unmarked black SUVs barreling down the street. No sirens. No announcements. Just raw, silent authority moving in. The older cop took a step back. He knew what was coming. "You need to let go of her. Now." His voice was tight, almost a whisper. But the younger officer's pride wouldn't let him. He had doubled down too hard, convinced himself he had this under control. His radio crackled. "Unit 12, do not engage. Stand down immediately." Too late. The first SUV skidded to a stop, and before the wheels even stopped turning, the doors flew open. 5 federal agents. Black suits, earpieces, weapons visible but holstered. And leading them, Deputy Director Andre Lawson. Camille exhaled through her nose. If Lawson was here, the situation had already escalated past control. He was on her in 3 strides. "Get these cuffs off her, now." The younger officer froze, his hands still on Camille's wrists. Lawson's voice dropped to something lethal. "I said, now." The officer fumbled, his fingers suddenly clumsy as he unlocked the cuffs. Camille rolled her shoulders as the metal clinked open, stepping forward to put space between her and the cop. But Lawson wasn't done. He turned to the officer with a cold, razor-sharp glare. "Name and badge number." The officer hesitated. Lawson's patience gone. He turned his head slightly. "Agent Foster, get his badge number. Get his commanding officer on the phone, now." One of the agents pulled out a phone, stepping aside as they made the call. The younger cop's chest rose and fell in sharp, panicked breaths. His face was drained of color. Camille rubbed her wrists, watching the moment reality hit him. The crowd had grown. Phones were everywhere. The woman in the denim jacket? Still filming. The older cop ran a hand over his face. Jesus Christ. He turned to the younger officer. "You just put hands on the director of the FBI." It sunk in. The younger cop took a step back. His mouth opened, then shut. Camille, for the first time, spoke. "You ignored my credentials. You ignored my lawful right to carry. You ignored every single protocol meant to prevent this exact situation." The officer swallowed hard. She cut him off. "You called me a suspect. You said I was resisting. You had your gun pointed at me." The words hung in the air. The younger officer's breathing grew unsteady. Lawson was watching him like a wolf staring down prey. Then, the final blow. "You're done." Camille didn't yell it. She didn't need to. The certainty in her voice was enough. The officer flinched, because he knew, right there, in front of everyone, his career had just ended. And then, as if to seal his fate, the voice from the phone call came through the agent's speaker. "Effective immediately, Officer Daniel Briggs is suspended without pay pending investigation. Federal authorities will be handling this case. Bring him in." A heartbeat, then chaos. The same agent who had made the call stepped forward. "Turn around. Hands behind your back." Officer Briggs didn't move. The older cop's voice was pained. "Son, don't make it worse." For the first time since this started, Briggs looked scared. Really, truly scared. His own handcuffs, the same ones he had used on Camille minutes ago, were now being locked around his own wrists. Bystanders whispered. Some shook their heads. Others just watched in silence. Briggs barely resisted as they walked him toward the SUVs. His face was pale, his hands trembling. "Camille?" She just watched. Her wrists still ached, but she didn't rub them anymore. She didn't need to. Because this was bigger than her now, and the world was about to see it. The street was silent. Not because there was nothing to say, but because everyone knew what had just happened. Officer Daniel Briggs, the same man who had forced Camille onto the pavement minutes earlier, was now in cuffs himself. His head was low, shoulders slumped, the weight of his actions finally hitting him. Lawson didn't say a word as Briggs was led toward one of the black SUVs. The same treatment Briggs had given Camille was now being given to him. Irony had a cruel way of showing up. The crowd wasn't cheering. This wasn't some viral feel-good moment. This was ugly. It wasn't about one bad cop. It was about what everyone had just witnessed. A black woman in power, humiliated on the street. A police officer so certain of his authority, he ignored protocol, ignored reality, ignored the very rules he was sworn to follow. And now, it was all unraveling. The woman in the denim jacket, still filming, stepped forward. "Director Foster, do you have anything to say?" Camille blinked. She hadn't realized how tired she felt until now. Her voice, when she spoke, was steady, controlled. "I'm fine, but this isn't just about me." The woman nodded. She understood, because everyone watching understood. The video had already hit social media. It was being shared, clipped, dissected. Every second of what had happened was now in the hands of the public. And just like that, this was no longer just a bad traffic stop. It was a national headline. By the time Camille reached the Washington field office, it was everywhere. Cable news, Twitter, Instagram. FBI director detained at gunpoint by officer. Suspect now in custody. Black woman in power still treated as a threat. How much has really changed? Law enforcement under fire after latest incident of excessive force. She scrolled through the headlines in the back of the SUV. Lawson sat across from her, watching. "You good?" She didn't look up. "You think he'll talk?" Lawson scoffed. "Briggs, he doesn't have a choice. His body cam footage is being pulled, and once that video gets out, there's no defending what he did." She knew that, but that wasn't what she meant. Briggs had power, and he abused it. Without hesitation, without doubt. Because deep down, he believed he was right. How many others did too? The next day, the footage was released. The raw, unedited body cam video. People saw everything. The way Briggs ignored her badge. The way he went straight for dominance instead of reason. The way he grabbed her, forced her down, pulled his gun without real cause. And the way he froze when he realized just who he had thrown into cuffs. The outrage? Immediate. Briggs was charged with unlawful detainment, excessive force, and falsifying a police report. Camille read the official statement from the Department of Justice. The actions of Officer Daniel Briggs were in direct violation of federal law and law enforcement protocol. His failure to verify the identity of Director Foster before escalating force demonstrates gross negligence and misconduct. He will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. He was facing federal charges. And suddenly, everyone in law enforcement had an opinion. Some officers rushed to defend him, saying he had acted on instinct. Others pointed out the obvious. If he could do this to the director of the FBI, what was stopping him from doing it to someone without power? The conversation exploded. Was this a power trip? Racial profiling? Gender bias? All of the above? The public had already decided. And Camille? She knew this was bigger than just one bad cop. This was a mirror. A mirror that some people didn't want to look into. But they couldn't ignore it now. The world was watching. The footage had done what Camille already knew it would, forced a conversation that some people didn't want to have. News anchors dissected every frame. Social media erupted with opinions. Some people were furious, calling for deeper investigations, wondering how many other officers acted like Briggs but never got caught. Others, defensive, claiming it was a misunderstanding, that Briggs was just doing his job. Camille had seen it before. The cycle of outrage, the debates, the division. But this time, it wasn't going away. Briggs sat in a federal holding cell waiting for his arraignment. He had lost everything. His badge, his pension, his future. And Camille, she didn't feel victorious. This wasn't a win. It was a reminder. She sat in a conference room at FBI headquarters, staring at her phone as another news alert flashed across the screen. Officer Briggs formally charged. Prosecutors seek maximum sentence. Lawson sat across from her, flipping through a file. Justice served. She exhaled. Justice would be if this never happened in the first place. He grunted. You know it's not just him. She did. Briggs was a symptom, not the disease. How many others walked around with that same unchecked power? How many more times would someone with less authority, less protection, less of a voice, get treated the way she was, but with no one there to stop it? She thought of the videos that didn't end like hers, the ones that ended in bodies, not arrests. She knew people would try to make her case the exception. She wasn't mistreated because she was black, he just didn't recognize her. This wasn't about power, he just made a mistake. But Camille knew better. This wasn't about who she was. It was about who he assumed she wasn't. And that was the real problem. The case against Briggs moved fast. The department was in damage control mode, eager to show that they didn't stand for misconduct. The trial was swift and public. Briggs took the stand. His voice shook as he tried to explain himself. I thought she was reaching for a weapon. She wouldn't comply. I was following my training. Camille sat in the courtroom, watching him try to justify something that had no justification. She could see it in his eyes. He had convinced himself he wasn't wrong. That somehow, this was all just a big mistake. But the jury, they didn't see a mistake. They saw abuse of power. They saw what the world saw. And they handed down a guilty verdict. The sentencing was harsh. Briggs was stripped of his badge, barred from law enforcement forever, sentenced to 7 years in federal prison. Some called it too much. Others, not enough. Camille? She just hoped it sent a message. Because at the end of the day, this wasn't just about her. It was about who gets the benefit of the doubt, who gets to be seen as a threat, who gets to walk away, and who never does. Camille stood before a podium months later, addressing a packed room of reporters. What happened to me shouldn't happen to anyone, but it does, every day, to people without cameras, without a title, without a way to fight back. She let that sink in. This isn't just about one officer. It's about accountability. It's about making sure that no badge gives someone the power to violate the rights of another person. And it's about making sure that the people we trust to enforce the law actually follow it themselves. The cameras flashed, the pens scribbled, the world listened. And she hoped, this time, something would change. What do you think? How many times does this story need to happen before real change comes? How do we hold law enforcement accountable? Not just in extreme cases like this, but every day. Let's talk about it. Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if this story made you think, even for a second, share it. Because the more people who see it, the harder it is to ignore.